this next story, I caught this guy's tweet just a while back and was blown away at what our next guest has built. Audric Moses is a manager of the lipidomics core facility at the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry at the University of Alberta. He's an environmental health advocate. He's a part-time bike commuter, and he is a net zero homeowner. Audric, welcome to Real Talk, and thanks for making time for us.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here.
Well,
how's my audio?
Your audio sounds perfectly fine. Thanks very much. And we're excited that you've agreed to essentially tour us around your place right now. But before you take us around, you've provided our team with some photos of the build of your beautiful new home, this net zero home. You've been proudly showing us your thermostat. It's holding steady at a comfortable 20 degrees inside with 40 and minus 40 temperatures outside. And you say not even a natural gas line running to the house. Do you mean literally? Is there literally no natural gas line running to the house?
I believe the line stops on the street somewhere, and so yeah, it does not make its way to the house.
Wow, so that takes some confidence at the building stage. Take us into the concept behind this and the carryout.
Yeah, so my wife Marnie and I, who I would say she knows as much or more about this stuff than I do. She's got an MBA specializing in sustainability. So we always wanted to do this. And so I had toured some of the net zero homes as part of the Eco Solar home tour. So if you go to ecosolar.ca, every year they have a tour of efficient homes essentially around Edmonton and now Calgary. And so basically, we figured we could do this, and I'm just going to take my earpiece out because it's bothering me. And so yeah, we were ready to move into a new place, and thought, why don't we try to make it super efficient? And it worked out well in the end.
Okay, so was part of your motivation? Were you saying let's do this to save money? Were you saying let's do this to be environmentally friendly? Did part of you want to prove the doubters wrong?
I would say it's part of A and B there. So in the long run, we thought it would be a good financial investment, but certainly we wanted to clean up our carbon footprint to some degree. And there are many different ways to do that. And this is just one of them.
So where do you need to begin when it comes to this? Because it's so much more than just putting solar panels on the roof, right? Or so much more than investing in the latest technology when it comes to the glass you have in your windows. Where do you begin at literally at a foundational level?
Yeah, so I would say if you're doing a new build, you either need to start doing a lot of research on your own, and there are definitely resources out there. Or alternatively, you can go to one of the builders in your location that does this sort of thing all the time. So I'm not trying to paint myself as like a real home green building expert. That's not necessarily the case. The actual experts are the guys who do this for a living, like the guys and girls who do this all the time. And actually, I made a little list for people in case they are interested of some of the more prominent green builders in Edmonton. So Habitat Studio is one. There's a fellow named Peter Amarongan who's a real, essentially, some people call him the godfather of net zero homes in Edmonton here.
Isn't Peter kind of? I think I've heard that name before, Audric. He's kind of famous for his own home, isn't he?
I'm actually not 100% sure about his own home.
If I'm thinking of the same guy, yeah, I think we might be right.
It's certainly possible, yeah.
So when you're taking a look at these builders and when you're saying I want to build net zero, to cut to the chase, do you have to be able to roll in with a budget that's between 10 and 30 or 40% higher than it would cost you to build your standard home without all the bells and whistles?
Yeah, it's definitely not as high as 30 or 40%. I think generally a lot of people would estimate that it's 10%, and those are even estimates from a number of years ago, and costs, of course, are dropping quite rapidly for that sort of thing. So there are some builders even around here that have gotten really good at doing this for as low a cost as possible. And sort of on that cost-effective end, I would definitely say Landmark Homes is sort of a leader. Like they've, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, and they were showcasing essentially a single-family home for $400,000 on a nice lot that's fully net zero. So that's the sort of budget where you might be looking at if you're looking at a new build for a single family home anyways.
So Audric, you start literally, and maybe Sam can tee up some of these photos for us. You've sent us basically images through the entire build. It's got to start with foundation. It's got to start with the types of studs they're using, right? The thickness of your wall, the type of insulation. Can you take us generally through the process? I know that viewers right now, including Julie Cusick, that they're planning on upgrading their pad. She says she's watching intently. People are taking notes right now. So what are some of the hacks, if you will?
So essentially the building envelope is really crucial, right? So your walls, your insulation, and the air tightness of the house itself, because essentially you don't want to be pouring money into heating the home and then having it all leak out, because essentially your house is quite porous, and normal building codes from a few years ago essentially didn't make builders build to any sort of airtight standard. And so it's better than that now, but you really want to go all out when you're making your building envelope airtight. And so that certainly is step one. Like, you have to have a well-insulated, airtight home if you are even considering electrifying and getting off the natural gas line.
So, Audric, do we need to have a different conversation? So Julie, for example, says they're piloting panelized technology for a deep energy retrofit on their house this coming summer through the Retrofit Canada project. She says we can't wait to be net zero. What do they need when you're retrofitting a home? Is it it's obviously got to be a whole different ball game. It's a different project.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I won't lie, it's a lot harder to do a retrofit, just because the structure of old homes tends to really not even be anywhere near as solid as it needs to be for net zero. So that's an area I think that's improving really quickly. And I think what a lot of retrofitters are doing is that they're essentially re-insulating and redoing the exteriors of houses. So instead of tearing down walls indoors, they do everything from the outside, basically. And so they add insulation and new siding and whatnot, all from the outside. And so that does simplify things for sure.
People can check out your Twitter thread at Audric Moses. You posted it February 7th, and you go through. I wanted to cover some of the things that you're not going to be able to show us now, obviously, like like your double wall studs that Sam was able to show us the photos of, your airtight building envelope. So when it comes to some of the other stuff, you've got this an air source heat pump. Your HVAC's a little bit different. A heat recovery ventilator, an air source heat pump, hot water tank. Triple paned windows, all this kind of stuff. For those of us that are at a very entry level of understanding the significance of this equipment or this infrastructure or how it works, can we ask you to brag a little bit?
Yeah, well, there's not much bragging involved. Anyone can grab one of these at any time, especially the hot water tanks. Although, to be fair, in Alberta, natural gas is quite cheap, so I'm not actually sure if you would save any money by switching to an air source heat pump hot water tank as opposed to your gas heated hot water tank. So so essentially that copper coil that you saw in the photo, that's a drain water heat recovery coil. And so as anytime someone's using a lot of hot water and it's flowing down the drains, so essentially showers is the main use for that. I believe it's up to 80% of the heat from that water is captured by the copper coil and is transferred to the cold water that's going into the hot water tank. So that supposedly saves quite a lot of on your hot water bill. I think it's up to 40% of your hot water costs just by having this preheated water and making use of heat that otherwise would have gone to waste.
Are you able to take us somewhere in the home and show us where the design might be a little bit different, or give us an example of the way that this home has been built to allow for the efficiency? I mean, first of all, just at a personal level, how does it make you feel to know that it's minus 35 outside and your house is holding steady at 20? Like, this is kind of right now this week the ultimate test, isn't it? I mean, limited daylight, lots of snow, frigid cold, everything that people say is supposed to bring a design like your home to its knees.
Yeah, no, it feels great just to know that what we planned out is actually working just as we hoped it would. And it's not really a matter of just showing off and saying, "Hey, look, we're net zero." I think the point to drive home here is just that it's possible for everyone to stop wasting energy and do things in a more efficient way, just in order to reduce that climate footprint or that carbon footprint. And there just are so many different ways to do that, and some of them even involve natural gas furnaces. So there are net zero homes, even in the area, I think, that are net zero, but they hit all the bells and whistles for insulation and airtightness and all that stuff. But they are able to hit net zero still using natural gas. So it's just a different way to go about it. And the way that we did it is certainly not the best way. It's not the only way. The situation is different for every person and every house that they're dealing with.
How well does it? We saw there a shot of your roof covered in those solar panels. How well do they do? Are you? I mean, with regards to, you said your natural gas the line stops at the street. With regards to power, I would imagine you've got some sort of a backup source. How well does the solar perform? You know, when we've got 8 hours of daylight and there's a bunch of snow up there.
Yeah. So essentially, the solar installers in our area, they'll size your system essentially for what you need, and they take into account the time that the panels may be covered by snow in winter, the daylight hours in winter, which are significantly less. So it certainly isn't necessary to make the effort to clean those panels off. We don't. It's a 2-story house. It would probably be a little dangerous. But I think that if we had a bungalow, I would probably be raking those things off just to squeeze that extra bit of clean energy out of the setup.
Yeah.
However, when they're deep covered in snow, they don't produce much. However, they do heat up fairly quickly, and so the snow tends to slide off as soon as there's any kind of warmth outdoors.
Audric, I know a lot of people are excited to tour this house a little bit. Can we ask you to show us around? Can we ask you to show us some of the cool stuff that you're able to see right now, not through the walls?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just see if I can get this working. I'm going to switch the camera.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. All right. So it's the kitchen here is fairly conventional. Efficient appliances, of course. The only thing that I would say maybe is somewhat of interest is, so we've got this induction cooktop. So induction works. Are you seeing this delay on the video, by the way? It's kind of
it's all good for me. No, it's working fine for us. Yep, you bet.
Yeah. So essentially it's induction. So rather than an electric element heating up the glass cooktop, and that's what heats up your pot. Induction works by directly using magnets to heat up any pot that contains iron or sufficient amounts of iron. And so yeah, it saves quite a bit of energy, I think, over conventional cooktops. So the other thing I wanted to show you was a lot of people ask, like, what are those things, those circles in the wall?
Yeah.
Right. So they look like little mouse holes. They might look like those
like
those
pot
sort of
lights,
air
kinda.
transport tubes that Costco used to use. So those are actually the ducts for the heat pump system. So it's what they call a mid-velocity system. And so rather than how a regular furnace kind of blasts hot air for short or long periods of time, and then the house kind of cools off, and once it drops, the furnace blasts hot air again. With this system, it maintains a much more consistent temperature using lower flows of air, and it just keeps the house more comfortable because you don't get these big temperature swings. So here we are, unfinished basement, of course. So not too pretty, nothing to see. So we've got some onions and garlic hanging from last year's garden. But I wanted to show you the insulation here. So can you see that?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so essentially this is the dense packed cellulose. So the double stud wall is basically two 2x4 walls beside each other, and the studs are offset. So that prevents the transfer of cold from the outside through the studs, because the studs are actually a really poor insulator. So having some cellulose between, sort of in the space in between the two walls, that really helps with the insulation.
Audric, did you explore attaboy, a drummer. Did you explore did you explore other options? Like the people on the chat are talking about straw. I know that's been used for 20, 30 years now for some people that are building the so-called sustainable homes. There's different approaches to take. Why did you go with what you did?
Yeah, so the dense packed cellulose really was the best bang for our buck. I think with straw, don't quote me on this, but I think that straw insulation does have to be quite a bit thicker. So I'm just actually going to pass the camera to Marnie here, and I'll point out the different components of this system.
Say hi to Marnie for us. We appreciate her doing this.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. Thank you.
This is what everybody's been waiting to see.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we start with that drain water coil, right? So this is what where the wastewater essentially flows through, and then once it's gone through there, it goes into the tank, and there you go. You have preheated water, and so this big thing up at the top, if you can see that, so that's actually the heat pump. So it's just sitting on top of the hot water tank, and it's extracting heat from the air in the basement, and it requires a surprisingly small space. Like if we were to make this a mechanical room in the near future, we don't need to give it like 100 square yards to operate. Like we can enclose it pretty decently, not super tight, but this can be a small room and it's still effective. So those things really work well.
Audric, we've got Scott's watching right now. He goes, so does this mean that the Moses family doesn't even get utility bills? Do you not receive utility? You must receive some form of utility bill.
Yeah. So net zero doesn't mean net zero dollars necessarily. It just means that over the course of the year, we average, or theoretically, we should be producing as much as we use. So the way that works in practice is that in winter, we do have bills for sure. So the highest bills for this house, which is, I guess it's not a small house. So our highest bills would tend to be about $400 a month, and that's for everything. So there's no gas bill on top of that. It's just 400 and whatever.
We've got an
so we would
interesting.
get those.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We do have some other questions here. Let me throw a couple in front of you. Julie, she and her family are embarking on this journey themselves. She wonders, do you have a HEPA filter on your air intake? She says, I'm wondering if we can do that so we don't get air pollution from forest fires, et cetera, with the air exchanger. Scott wonders if not using forced air helps with keeping humidity at a constant level.
Right. So I don't know if so that's what this thing is up here. So this is the heat recovery ventilator. And so when you have an airtight house, you have to have this active ventilation, and it does act as a filter. I don't know if it's HEPA level filtration, but we do have a furnace filter of sorts as well that essentially is a second layer of that. So yeah. So back to actually what I was saying. So the highest bills are, say, in the $400. In summertime, we expect credits on our bills of up to, in a good year, we should be getting close to $300 credits in the height of summer.
Wow.
So it does really offset the cost, even though the cost is not net zero. And that's fair because we shouldn't be allowed to use the grid without essentially paying for it, right? So a lot of those transmission and distribution charges we're still paying for, and that's absolutely fair. We should be paying for that.
Would your wife absolutely kill us if we asked her to appear on camera to answer a question? She didn't sign up for this. We didn't ask ahead of time.
Yeah.
How does she feel about it?
I can ask her.
Because she's got it.
Would you like to, Marnie, would you like to answer a question on camera?
Sure.
I mean,
says okay. If
Marnie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. Can you hear me okay?
I don't think she can hear you at all.
Okay. Well, maybe Audric. So Audric, you can pass the question along. So she's an MBA in sustainability. There's going to be thousands of people that are going to watch this, and people are really inspired. Why was this important for her? And now that she's sitting here, literally broadcasting the house, what's going through her mind as you communicate this home to other people?
Yeah. So Marnie, Ryan asks, so what inspired you to do this, an MBA in sustainability? And essentially, and sorry, what was the second part?
Well, yeah, I mean, no,
Ryan?
that's good enough as it stands. Yeah.
That's good enough. Yeah. So why did you want to do that?
Well, I mean, went to school for a long time and got a master's degree in the sciences. But one of the things that didn't translate well was that whole idea of the business community understanding the science and using that evidence to make really good, smart business decisions. And so I wanted to get into a space where the business community would, sort of take that science and agree with it and sort of use it to make decisions. And so in order to get there, you had to have a business credential, so people would kind of believe that you understood both the science and the business side. So that's why I decided to do the MBA, to have credibility on both sides.
A fascinating field. Can you ask her, Audric, if she believes that your home answers the critics and the haters? I mean, in the middle of Edmonton, freezing cold, here it is comfortable. Is this the answer to the haters?
So, Marnie, do you think that this house and how it's performing answers the critics and the haters of clean energy?
I hope so. Lots of people, wonder about these things, like how can it be done? And I think this is a good example of how it can be done. So I think it definitely demonstrates that it works. I think there's lots of new technologies coming out that will make things even better and easier. But I think this is a good first step for sure.
And finally, Audric, could you ask her, is there with regards to property value, resale, does she believe in that context that a move like this is a no-brainer?
Yeah. So do you think that property value and resale value are positively affected by something like this?
Definitely. People are more aware of the cost of home ownership. And, when you look at costs, like the expenses, associated with owning a home. It's not just, the actual mortgage and the cost of the house, but it's all of the things, the maintenance. And so as people become more aware of those things and are thinking about them and understand how that affects your monthly bills, that this will be a huge feature for people in the future. Definitely.
Very cool.
I talk to more and more people every day who have that thought anyway.
This is great. Well, Marnie, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Audric, I want to ask you in closing. I've been following you on Twitter at Audric Moses, and I encourage other people to do the same. And one of the things that I thought was kind of funny, although I would imagine for you kind of frustrating, is that the minute that you post about your home, you start getting those chirps. People start coming at you and saying, "Well, how do you think that your solar panels were manufactured? We still need oil and gas." And I noted that out of the gates, you weren't cracking on oil and gas. In fact, you were very careful to say, "I'm not taking a swipe at oil and gas." How do you reconcile that conversation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This isn't meant in any way to be a dig at oil and gas. Like, our oil and gas industry is going to be around for decades more, and it should be, right? It's necessary for all sorts of things, plastics and lubricants and whatever. However, it's time that we move away for the things that it's not necessary for. So transport, heating, there are better solutions and that are certainly better for the planet. And so that's my take on that. Like, I hope that every oil industry worker in Alberta keeps their job for decades to come. What I'm opposed to is this idea that the oil sands need to continually expand and expand and expand and grow, right? I think that it's time for that to stop. And so existing industry should proceed. And I know that's not helpful for shareholders. The shareholders want the growth, right? That's how the company kind of grows itself and increases its profits. But what's helping the actual workers is simply the fact that they have work, and they can have work without having endless expansion of what is, you can't really argue that it's not really a clean industry. So yeah, that's my take on that. And actually, Ryan, before you give me the hook, I do want to make sure that the other points in my post was to point out that this PACE financing, which is now approved in Alberta and should, I think, be approved soon in Edmonton. So that's a real game changer, because that allows people to finance the cost of finance the cost of green upgrades, essentially with no money down, and to start reaping the rewards, the financial benefit of those green upgrades with zero money down, and to pay that off as part of their property tax. And the second point to that payoff is that if you sell the house, the remaining balance is transferred to the next owner. So you're not paying for the full system if you move after a year. And so it's been super effective in other jurisdictions. And I think this is one, if not the first PACE financing program like this in Canada. And it really removes the barriers to getting into these green upgrades.
We've got first of all, the technical producer of this show in the room is pumping his fist at the mention of PACE financing, and we've got viewers as well, like Patrick and Julie, that are all in all caps being like, PACE, love it. So you got people on board. Here's the thing: you may look. I mean, we have something similar, not even really remotely similar, but neighborhood upgrades that we did, and some of it, you could either pay a certain number of $1,000 an hour, roll it into your property tax. We chose the latter. What I love about PACE is that you may say, yeah, these new buyers will inherit these payments on the property tax. At the same time, they're inheriting the rebates that you've been receiving. They're inheriting the immediate return on investment, right? The work is done. And I can't imagine that wouldn't be a draw. I mean, I as a buyer myself, I'd certainly be interested.
Yeah. And if your upgrades are impactful enough in terms of your energy use, theoretically, you could end up financially ahead, even though you're paying off these upgrades, because the amount that you're saving it is possible that would be more than the amount that you're paying in extra costs to pay it off. So, really a total game changer. It basically can cost you nothing to totally green up your carbon footprint.
I guarantee you people have been taking notes nonstop on this. Our chat is so engaged right now. Audric, it's no small thing for somebody to invite a viewing audience into their home, and we're grateful that you and Marnie have both done that and made yourselves available. Thanks for bringing us up to speed. This is a really neat build. Congratulations.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it. That's Net Zero Homeowners Audric.